Okay. And then I wanted to play this. Okay. All of these events led up to the biggest moment in our country's history, the time when we finally said no to Britain, the moment when our founding fathers declared our independence, the moment the United States was born. It brings tears to my eyes just thinking about it.
Now, let's get down to the nitty-gritty. The first event of this long and winding road to revolution is the French and Indian War. Never mind.
Okay, the name of this war confuses a lot of us because we tend to think that the French fought the Indians. This isn't so. It was actually the French and Indians, well, most of them anyway, that fought together against the colonists and British.
Why was everyone fighting? Excellent question. It was actually over an area of land known as the Ohio River Valley. The Ohio River Valley was an excellent area for farming. It had extremely, and still does, has extremely fertile soil. In addition, the Ohio River was a great source for transportation. You see, the Ohio River fed directly into the Mississippi River, which then led directly out to the Gulf of Mexico, so farmers could get their goods out to the Atlantic Ocean and to the colonies.
Now, I know some of you are thinking, why would they just not take their goods directly east? That would be a lot closer to the colonies. Let's take a look at the map on the next slide. Oops, wrong way. What is blocking farmers from living in this area from just going east to the colonies?
The Appalachian Mountains.
Believe it or not, but it was actually much faster for people living in this area to move their goods down the Ohio River to the Mississippi, out the Gulf of Mexico, and then back around to the colonies this way. Isn't that crazy? The Appalachian Mountains were that cumbersome or difficult to get through.
This area is also great for fur trading. The Native Americans would hunt beavers, deer, anything with fur, and trade it for different goods. As we know, beaver fur hats were all the rage.
By the way, this war was also being fought in Europe. There, it was called the 7 Years' War. So let's review your blanks real quick. Up here, you should have French. Here, the British. And here is that oh so very important Ohio River Valley. And then down here, the 7 Years' War.
Okay, here on the map, we can see the Ohio River Valley very clearly. It is the area mainly north of the Ohio River, right around the area that the Ohio River flows, where the Ohio River flows into the Mississippi. Notice that both France and Britain claim this area. That's going to be a problem.
That is a problem. As we know, land equals what? Power. And the competition between countries to get more land often led to wars. And here is a perfect example.
Okay, so notice that the three big European powers that all claimed land in North America, Britain in the green, France in the pink, and Spain in the gold. This is all about to change with the outcome of this war.
So exactly how did this war erupt? Can you believe it was actually our first president, George Washington, who was mostly responsible for the first shots? He was a member of the Virginia militia and was sent into this disputed territory to build a fort. Fort Necessity, it became named. The French, too, had a fort. In fact, it was very close to where Washington built Fort Necessity, which is why Washington was sent to build Fort Necessity, to stake a claim after the French had already done the same thing.
This was Fort Duquesne. Look at the picture of these two forts.
This is Fort Necessity, and this is Fort Duquesne.
Which group do you think was better prepared? Yes, I agree. The French. The French had also really established themselves in this area. They had created good relationships with the natives and a very profitable fur trading business.
Now some say that it was Washington himself that prompted the French attack on Fort Necessity. Whoever really started the fight doesn't truly matter. What does is that the war had begun and would be fought for 7 long years. Oh, let's review your blanks. Up here, it should be the French. That's kind of important to realize that the Native Americans had a better relationship with the French. Okay, here, both France and Britain claimed that ever so important Ohio River Valley.
Remember, everyone wants the Ohio River Valley. It's great for farming, great for transportation. It's like the perfect spot.
Now the British were very proud of their military, as they should have been, because it was truly a very powerful military. They had managed to conquer areas all over the world. The 13 colonies were not their only colonies, and this grand military didn't really think too much of the colonial militia.
Militias, by the way, were small bands of colonists who, in the time of need, would gather together to defend the colony. Usually, this was to fight off the native attacks that occurred more and more often as more and more Native American land was taken.
Only a few militias were allowed to participate with the British soldiers in this war. Most colonists served as suppliers to the military. One famous founding father did participate in the war. You guessed it, George Washington. He served as an advisor to some of the head British officers, like General Braddock. In other words, he would give ideas about battle strategies. This is where Washington gained all of his military experience that he will use in just a short time against the British as the commander of the Continental Army. Other militiamen served as guides since they knew the land.
All right, your blank right here should say George Washington served as an advisor to General Braddock.
We will be discussing this cartoon in class. However, right now, we want you to take a look at it and answer the question.
So pause the video and answer the question. What do you think is the message that Ben Franklin is trying to give?
Ben Franklin tried something extraordinary at this point in our history. He tried to unite the colonies together. He thought it would help defeat the French and Indians if all the colonies worked together. What an idea. Remember, at this point, the colonies mostly saw themselves as independent entities. No one had loyalty to the colonies as a whole, only to themselves and the British Crown.
Uniting together at this time failed, and in fact, the colonies will take years to truly unite and become one. The British Parliament also refused the idea of uniting the colonies. However, we still see the first attempt made to have the colonies work together. Ben Franklin will be around again when it becomes even more important to unify the colonies, this time against the British.
So up here, you should have Ben Franklin. Notice that this is in bright orange. Extremely important. Albany Plan of Union, the first attempt to unify the colonies together. And down here, you should have fails. Unfortunately, it did not work at this point in time. I'm sorry, those slides are out of order.
The end. Britain wins, but not easily. The Native Americans used guerrilla warfare, which means they hid in trees, used ambush or sneak attacks against the British. The British were not used to this type of fighting. They were used to meeting on a battlefield, facing their enemy eye to eye. This type of warfare was very new for the British and very successful for the Native Americans.
The Treaty of Paris officially ends the war. There is always a treaty that ends a war. We will refer to this Treaty of Paris as the First Treaty of Paris, since there will be a second one as well. Since France lost, they lose all their land claims in North America, except Haiti, which is half the island of Hispaniola. Look at the map on the next slide. Spain and Britain split the rest of the French land, with Spain giving Florida to Britain. Okay, so here, right here, this is it. This is all the French have left on their claim in North America. Just half an island, not even the whole island.
Not even half the island. It's like a tiny little bit.
And they're not going to keep that for much longer. And here, the British, here's the 13 original colonies, just as a reminder. And now, there's all this land that's now under British control. And here is Spain. No more pink. Okay?
The French are gone. The colonists couldn't have been happier. They were so proud to be British and so proud of this major accomplishment of beating the French. Remember, the British and the French have a long-standing dislike of each other. They were always fighting. The colonists' love of the king and being British will not last long. Everything is about to change.
Right here, you should have Treaty of Paris. Remember, this is the first Treaty of Paris. That's pretty important to know. And then down here, Britain gains Canada, and Spain gains the French land west of the Mississippi River. Okay? Oh, I put this slide in twice.
No, you went back and forth to it. I don't think you did.
I think it's before the slide too, though.
Oh.
It's okay.
Here's the aftermath representing European land claims in North America. Okay, once again, notice Haiti. This is all the land that France has now in North America. So now, Britain and Spain control all of North America, except that little tiny piece.
Very, very important. They are the major controllers of North America, Britain and Spain. So now Britain controls the coveted land of the Ohio River Valley. This is where all the colonists will be heading. Thousands of people have been moving into the colonies, and now that they have won all this valuable land, colonists want to expand.
Makes sense. Colonists were so excited about all the available resources out west in the Ohio River Valley. There was good soil and wild game, plentiful in the area.
However, Native Americans were also living in the area. Violence erupted between colonists and Native Americans in what became known as Pontiac's Rebellion. What everyone kept seeming to forget is the land first belonged to Native Americans, and the French had always treated the Indians fairly.
The problem for Britain became, how will they defend the frontier from invasion, and how will they protect the colonies from Indian attack? This is the problem. Let's look at your blank. Colonists were excited about expanding west.
Into that ever so important Ohio River Valley. The solution. Thankfully, King and Parliament came up with what they thought was a fair solution. Why not just keep the colonists safe right where they are? So they passed the proclamation line. This forbids settlers from moving west of the Appalachian Mountains. They felt like this was the perfect border. In addition, King and Parliament sent more soldiers to help secure the line. And they had the colonists cover the cost of the soldiers. Sounds like a great deal, right? Why wouldn't anybody love this? Right here, you should have settlers forbidden from going past the eastern edge of the Appalachian Mountains.
Eastern edge. The colonists' reaction. Wrong. The colonists couldn't believe that the British had taken such drastic measures.
They had just helped fight a 7-year-long war to gain access to this land, and now Britain was taking it away? Not to mention the fact that several colonists already moved into this new territory. Now these settlers were being cut off from the rest of the colonies. Colonists were also upset at having soldiers during peacetime. English law actually stated that there could be no military active during peacetime. And here in the colonies, they were doing just that. And then making them pay for these soldiers they did not even want? No way.
Some of the colonists just ignored the line and crossed it anyway. Let's check out this actual footage of a colonist reaction to the enacting of the proclamation line.
Sorry. Actual colonists.
Reacting to the proclamation line.
Feel a bit better now. Oh, there's... Lots of...
Okay, just real quick, let's just go over your blanks. Here, you're going to fill in your own emotion. What was the colonists' reaction to the proclamation line? And then down here, argued standing army in peacetime was unlawful. Very, very important. Standing army in peacetime was unlawful. And that is it.
Oh, okay.
And as soon as I figure out how to stop this,